Lately, I've been trying to adopt a philosophy of like, I just don't care anymore what you think, how you think. I don't care if you're anti-vaccine, pro-vaccine, anti-mask, pro-mask, etc. By the way, I'm on day 9 of having COVID here. Tested positive, and it's not a false positive or anything like that. I've yet to have one sign of it. Thank you, vaccine, and thank you for overall good state of health. But that aside, um, I saw a story in my Twitter feed last night from the AP, and I like it blew my mind that this is a thing. So much so that, again, I don't care if you're for or against this. I just want to talk about this because it is something that is very near and dear to me, and that is accuracy in history, specifically my nation's history, specifically those who teach the history in my nation. All right. So in my feed last night is this story from the AP, and looking at this, I'm like, this is seriously a thing? Already passed the state education board in Florida is a bill that is saying whites should not have to feel discomfort when teaching such sensitive subjects as racism and any sort of segregation, any sort of just anything in the past that would give them discomfort, specifically dealing with discrimination. Now, I'm sitting here going, well, that's a pretty big part of our history. So, what this bill would do, if passed, is you, as a white instructor, if you feel any sort of discomfort teaching about racial discrimination in this nation's past, you don't have to do it. Now, this then begs the question of like, well, then what do we say happened? Do we go ahead and we teach, well, you see, well, there was this thing like blacks wanted rights in this country, and then the nation came up with separate but equal, and everything was good. Everyone had a water fountain to drink from. Don't look up pictures of what those water fountains look like. No, everyone had a water fountain to drink from. That's all there was to it. The end. Blacks and whites got together ever since. Like, is that what history's going to be now? Blacks got the rights to vote. What's the big deal? Oh, what's that? They had to pass certain tests in certain states. Oh, no. We don't want to teach that part. They got the right to vote. That's all that matters. They got the right to vote. That's all there is to talk about. Blacks got the right to vote. Whites got the right to vote. What's the deal? Nothing else came from that, right? Like, this is mind-blowing. Like, you can't teach the discomforts of racial, just anything derogatory, anything segregation, anything like that. Like Jim Crow. Like, would Jim Crow even be discussed in school if something like this gets passed? And you might be saying, let's just relax, Archie, let Florida be Florida. But the problem is this sets a precedent. This will set a precedent in saying that, well, there's I'm from Germany or whatever, and my kid is of German descent, and they feel they shouldn't have to hear about Nazi atrocities during World War II. So what is World War II going to be? Or say there's a Japanese kid, and the Japanese parent feels offended, and they're going to say, well, I don't want my kid to learn about Pearl Harbor. Okay, then what, was Pearl Harbor just not going to exist? And that's what I'm freaking out so much about this, because I've been like this for a long time as far as sanitizing factual history to make others feel comfortable. And I'm looking at you, Disney. Specifically the movie Pearl Harbor. Did you know that the movie Pearl Harbor, yes, I know it's a terrible film and a few people saw it anyway, Disney sanitized that movie so that it could be shown in Asian markets. Because we don't want to offend like the Chinese or the Japanese with, I don't know what the Japanese actually did during World War II. Like, sorry, they were the aggressors. How do you want us to paint this? That like we dropped nukes first and then they retaliate on Pearl Harbor? Like, is that what we want it to be? Like, damn, like for once, America isn't the aggressor, and Disney is going out of their way to censor the movie. And I use the word censorship because that's actually what this is. This is like, my mind is blown that this actually passed a vote. And one of the people, Senator Shervin Jones, State Senator Shervin Jones in Florida, is one of the biggest proponents of it. And they're black. Like, first of all, they're going to break the record for a number of time being called Uncle Tom in the 21st century. But that aside, like, how can this be a thing? Like, okay, I'm hoping that common sense will prevail, and that the state senate will vote this down in Florida, because the bill just got ratified by the education board, and next it would be voted on by the state legislature. And the governor's for it. DeSantis is before this, so he's actually spoken out for it. So he's going to ratify it if it gets put forth by the Senate, the state Senate. And it's just like you're going to see a domino effect of other states saying, like, yeah, well, I don't want to teach about racial segregation and discrimination and stuff. That makes white people look bad. I mean, it should make you feel uncomfortable as a white person. Like, honestly, it makes me feel very uncomfortable what this nation's past was and how this nation was built. Like, you talk about this being the greatest nation in the world. This nation was built on slavery and discrimination. Let's not sugarcoat it. And just saying that is just a fact of history. Is it my fault that it happened? No. Do I feel bad that it happened? Yes. I'm not enslaving anyone. I'm not forcing discrimination of anyone or anything at this point in history. It's not my fault, but it is the facts of history. And yes, as a white person, oh yeah, no, poor white man's guilt, blah, 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 grow up, whatever. I know you're going to say that stupid shit. But just as someone, as a knower and appreciator of history, yeah, I look back at that history period and say, well, this was a great nation that was formed, but there was some very dark shadows on that as well. Sorry, that's the worst I got from COVID, is occasional throat clear every 10 minutes. Anyway, I can't believe this. I can't believe this, because again, I could see this becoming like, one German kid gets upset and the parents saying, like, I don't want my kid to learn about World War II, or the Japanese kid saying, I don't want to learn about Pearl Harbor. Again, this is absolutely what can happen. Don't take steps towards this. Don't try and sanitize history. History is what it was. I mean, okay, I can understand not teaching like religious history in school because you need a little bit better proof than like a burning bush talking. Like, okay, I get that. But man, it's like we have visual, written, handed down stories, documents, etc. of what racial discrimination was like. It's not like it's fake. It's not like those black and white water fountains that are taking pictures of were just like faked. Like the moon landing. But I'm just kidding. Where am I? Anyway. I mean, it's history, people. It's this nation's history, and we're talking about sanitizing those that teach history to kids in this country. And it actually even goes beyond public schools. This bill also includes workplaces that teach about discrimination. If you don't want to teach about discrimination because it makes you feel uncomfortable as a white employer, or just any employer, like, I don't know, if you're black and you're against teaching racial discrimination, you can go against this too. I don't know why it would make you feel uncomfortable as a black person to spell out the facts of discrimination, but whatever. I guess they reserve the right to do it too, technically. Just mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. I can't believe that this passed any step of the process. I mean, and it's not even that big of a story. It's not even that big of a story. And like, I see the comments saying like, hey, the nation's been held accountable for discrimination for over 100 years, depending on how far back you want to go back to slavery, a couple hundred years. How much longer do we have to feel bad as a nation for this? I mean, you tell me out there, if you're from another nation, are the bad things taught of your nation, like even in Canada, what were the schools called? I should have had this put together better in my brain. There was these schools in Canada that were set up for Native North Americans, and there was like bad treatment of them. A number of them were like buried in mass graves and stuff like this. It's like one of the darkest things in Canada's history. Is anything taught about that in Canadian schools? Because I know someone out there has to be, and someone could tell me the exact name of the schools that the Oh God, I'm drawing a total blank. I know this is terrible for this video to end on this note, but anyways, but like if you're German, is World War II and the atrocities of the Nazis taught in public school in Germany? I would think they are. In fact, I'll end on this note. There's two foreign countries I've been in this world, two of which I'll name is Germany and Russia. And I had a tour guide take my wife and I around in a tour group with us to see like a number of the sites in both countries. And one is I'll start with the Russian tour guide first. She told us a number of things like St. Catherine's Palace and the Hermitage, stuff like that in St. Petersburg, Russia. St. Catherine's Palace is outside of St. Petersburg. But anyway, she talked about how, Soviet era Russia was so mean to the Russian people. We don't look back on it with fondness. We don't really appreciate it that much. But one of the things that the Soviets did right was taking care of things that were historical, like the St. Catherine's Palace. Like when the Bolsheviks came in and wiped out, all the royals, there was still a preservation of that royal history when they were ruled by a monarchy in Russia. It's not like they took, everything, like took all of Anastasia's clothes and like burned them in a fire or something like that. There's tremendous accounts of history there. And the Soviets, when they moved into the Soviet era, they could have just pissed on the ashes of everything from the monarchy days. And going into Germany with the German tour guide, and again, like just to backtrack for a second, the tour guide just had this utter distaste for the era of the Soviets, of the Soviet Union era, but she at least had respect of what they did for history. So even though she despised what the Soviet era was and what the Soviet Union did negatively in society, she at least respected them for something they did, which was preserve history. And then the German tourist guide that I had, he talked about how, someone in the group actually brought up, does it make you feel comfortable going through, talking about the Holocaust and stuff like that? Because we went we saw like a Holocaust memorial and stuff like that. And I'm paraphrasing what he said. He said, I don't personally, feel I have any specific tie to it. No one in my family was a member of the SS or anything like that during World War II. That he knew of. But he said, he has friends where, the grandfather was a member of the SS, or another grandparent was a guard at Auschwitz or something like that in a concentration camp. And he says, it's not like I'm going to hold it against one friend to another because, they aren't that representation of the past. They are a descendant of the past. It's one thing if, they both have swastikas tattooed on backs of both hands or something like that. That's a whole different thing. But it's you just have to give people a chance, but you also have to understand history. So anyways, that's what I'm going to leave you with. There is nothing wrong with feeling discomfort about history based on your skin color. Because again, it's a very uncomfortable thing to look back on, but do I personally feel responsible? No. You shouldn't feel shameful that you were responsible. Oh man, I'm responsible for segregation in the 1960s. I wasn't even born yet. How can I be responsible? But I can understand and feel sorrowful for it. But I'm sure not going to feel discomfort in teaching it. Again, it might not be the most comfortable thing to teach, but I will willingly teach it. I guess that's a better part. You can feel uncomfortable, but you can willingly teach it. I guess that's more of the note I was trying to hit. Anyways, way to go, Florida. I mean, they just lead the nation in bizarreness, man. Because when something bizarre goes down, you kind of just don't even need to look. It's probably Florida. No offense, Florida, but you're a very bizarre state. That is all.